Hi, and welcome to the kitchen today. I'll be finishing up some banana bread to explain a little bit about baking powder and about the gluten in flour, but this is also going to be partially a commercial. I'll be using Your Sugar, My Spice blend from Spice Roads. This contains true cinnamon, which is also in the recipe, and cardamom and mace and white vanilla. Three other exotic ingredients that I'm quite sure you don't have in your kitchen, and this is a simple and economical way to bring these flavors to your family. Now, this is the dry mix. I've already added a half a cup of salt. Excuse me, a half a cup of salt. Ooh, that would be good. A half a teaspoon of salt. And I've already added 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Now, as you recall, on the can here it says double acting. Double acting means that it has 2 ways of leavening the bread. First of all, it has baking soda, which leavens in high heat, but it also has some acid salts, sulfates and phosphates in it, that when mixed with moisture actually starts to give off carbon dioxide and leaven the bread. I have mixed the flour and baking soda and salt well previously, and I'm going to set that aside, which is very typical with quick breads, and I'll explain why in a little bit. And then I've also got the banana, the Your Sugar, My Spice, and sour cream and oil. Now, one thing that I need to explain is that Your Sugar, My Spice is highly concentrated. It has less sugar than needed. That's why it's Your Sugar and Our Spice, because we don't want to sell you expensive sugar, and we don't want to ship that weight. So what I have done is added only 1/3 cup of the sugar blend and 2/3 cup of sugar, and you'll see how that is already turning that color very nice and very rich. And let me stir that together. Now, on the wet mixture, I'm going to stir this and blend it to begin with. And the next thing I need to do is add 2 eggs. Now, with egg, we try not to blend that too much more than we have to, but it's not going to hurt it if you do. Now, again, when we mix this wet mixture, stirring is not a problem really. We want this relatively lump-free. There's still going to be some chunks of banana, but the sugar and the oil and sour cream is mixed well with the egg. At this point, what we need to do is add the flour in. Now, this is where things start to get tricky. Flour, as we know, has 2 structural components. One is starch and one is protein. Gluten, as a matter of fact. Once we put the flour with the wet mixture, the moisture starts to leach out the starch. Once that starch starts to leach out, it makes the protein chains available to agglutinate, meaning they chain up and make long chains, which are almost like rubber bands. These gluten chains are wanted in full-term breads when we're making yeast breads, but in quick breads, we only have so much opportunity for carbon dioxide to be released. 1 shot with the baking soda and 2 shots with the acid salts, but still it's short-lived. So we can't afford to have gluten chains hindering that loft, hindering that leavening that we want. So I'm going to put in the baking powder, or excuse me, the mix of flour and baking powder and salt, and put that together, and we're going to do everything we can do to not overmix it. That means pulling in the wet to the dry, and in fact we may even leave a few dry lumps of flour once it looks mostly mixed. Being very careful and very gentle, not just whipping it. That's not going to do well. We want to take the dry spots and move it into the wet spots, and take the wet spots and move it into the dry spots. And we're almost there. And I'll be putting this in an oiled and floured loaf pan and cooking it in the oven at 350 degrees for 1 hour. The one thing that I haven't done yet, and it's ready for this, is to add the nuts, because it is banana nut bread. You'll notice that it was supposed to be a half of chopped nuts. Well, I put a cup and a third of whole, or half, but not cracked or broken nuts. I like that nice big crunch, and I don't feel like my customers are being cheated by giving them a full piece of nut. Also, when you slice the bread, it's going to cut the nut anyway, to a certain extent. Okay, and now we have it. It's mixed. You can still see there's small lumps of flour and not overdone. And I'll put this in a pan and bake it and be back in a moment. The oven bell just went off. Let's check and see what we have. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It's doubled in size at least, and give us a nice split, which is characteristic of a good loaf. Let's turn it out and see what we have. Nice brown crust without being overdone. Beautiful loaf. Thank you for being with us.